So to start off with my makeup, I love this palette also. Amber and rose gold are the perfect all over lid colors. And here's my Lorac Pro Matte palette. This palette made me want to sell my Naked 1 and Naked 2 Basics palette, so that shows how much I love it. Here's my Lorac Pro To Go palette. I used this thing for like a month straight at one point, and I kind of had to put it down and hide it from myself so that I wouldn't keep using it. It's really good for those days where you just don't feel like figuring out what kind of eyeshadow look you want to do. Or if you're really not good at eyeshadow at all, just get this palette because all the eyeshadows really just blend together and look so good. Here's my Lorac Pro palette. This is just your basic eyeshadow palette that everyone has, holy grail. Like, if you don't know what you're doing, just pick this up and you will find something, honey. Here's my Lorac Pro 2 palette. I love this palette also. I use this one probably more than my Lorac Pro 1 palette. I just love all the eyeshadows. Here's my Lorac Pro 3 palette. This palette is perfect for those days where you don't want to look like you're wearing eyeshadow, but you really are.